In 1997, a psychologist at Liverpool University discovered that 65% of conversations are made up of one skill. Several studies showed what's happening in a listener's brain when you use it. It becomes hard not to listen because it releases dopamine along with oxytocin, the key hormone in trust, connection, and attraction. That skill is storytelling. And today, I'm breaking it down into a simple yet comprehensive way. But what if I don't have any good stories? Stories don't need to be about life or death situations in order for them to be interesting. You can make checking into a hotel interesting, which I'll show you later. But on the other hand, you can talk about your child that was missing for years in a way that no one cares about. Like if a stranger said to me, I found my son, I'd say, cool, were you guys playing hide and seek? Because no matter the story, you need buildup. I think of a story as an impactful climax moment, and then the smaller moments that give context and build up to it. Obviously, you have to know how to begin and end a story, which I'll get to, but if your climax moment is smaller, it just means you need less buildup. It can still keep people listening, though. So, how do you make a story interesting? Well, this next storytelling technique is what gets people begging you to tell them more, and there's two parts to it. The first part has to come into your story or moment as soon as possible. If you don't, people will tune out because what you're telling them will seem pointless. Here's an example.
I want to make sure that my kids understand the value of hard work and what the meaning behind it should be. So I want to take you to where dad is from. So we take a trip.
See what he did there? He made you want what he wants simply by saying his desire. To teach his kids. Sometimes you can skip that and show your desire with the second part of this technique.
He was like, hey, I'm gonna let you know, they're gonna pop this door and they're coming for you. And I was like, really? I was like, what do you mean? He's like, they're gonna come and get you when this door
The
pops.
second part he just introduced is an obstacle or problem. And when there's a problem, it's clear that your desire is to fix it. When you pair a desire with an obstacle, it creates a tension that has listeners begging to know what happens next. And for a moment to be interesting, the conflict between the two needs to sway in either direction, meaning you either get closer or further from your desire. But what if it feels like there aren't any obstacles in your story? Well, if you know the types, it makes it much easier to highlight the conflict, and you don't have to make anything up. The renowned book by Robert McKee, Story, divides conflict into three types. There's inner conflict, which is you getting in your own way. There's personal conflict, and that's when your relationships are the problem or the obstacle in your way. Finally, there's external conflict. That's actual physical obstacles that get in your way. So, for each moment, tell the battle between the actions that you took to get your desire and the problems you faced. But how much detail do you add? Because good descriptions allow people to visualize and become so immersed in your story that it's impossible not to pay attention. First, you need to know which details are important. Any that add to the conflict are important because they push your story forward while you add them. Like if your story was about a scary house, you describe the torn down walls and the creaking doors, but if it doesn't add to the conflict, you still want to create a picture. It should just be basic though. Other important details are to give any context that people need to understand a part of the story. Except those can draw away from the conflict, so you want to be efficient with your descriptions. Like, look at how much detail Fluffy can give with only a few words.
One time I was trying to check into a hotel in Chicago at 1 o'clock in the morning because I missed my flight. Nobody's at the front desk, just a little bell and a sign that said ring for service.
A single detail like hotel creates an entire picture in your mind because everyone's been to a hotel before. So, unless the details of the hotel matter to the story, you don't need to explain them. For example, the bell he described. You're about to see why it matters.
So there I am. Ching, 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 ching. All of a sudden, I heard this. I hit a bell.
Another amazing thing he does here is role playing. He didn't say he rung the bell 10 times and he didn't summarize what the lady said. He acts it out, he does impressions, and he gives dialogue. Not only is role playing much more interesting, it allows you to give details while simultaneously pushing the story forward.
All of a sudden, this lady came out just. Are you the one ringing that damn bell?
He didn't even need to describe the woman, and I'm pretty sure you already have a picture in your head. Now, how do you start a story in a way that hooks people's attention? Well, first, not sure if you knew this or anything, but you got to be in a conversation. So if you want a step-by-step guide on starting conversations, click the link at the top of the description. But assuming you're already in one, you need to make sure your story connects to what's already being talked about. Like if the conversation's about crazy friends, you can tell a story about a crazy friend. Or if you're talking about dogs, you can tell a story about your dog's weird quirks. But before you start, you need everyone's attention. It's a little trickier in groups than one on one, so you gotta be this persistent.
When I was a kid, I was so sickly.
She got you in a headlock and shot you a penicillin.
Listen to me.
Where'd the needle go?
Listen to me.
Top of his head?
Cubans. I had a Cuban doctor.
Use names, repeat yourself, or literally say, listen to me. Because even if your story is amazing, you'll have moments in the middle of it where you'll have to get people's attention again.
He said, get a drink, man. You ain't gonna have a drink with me? I said, yeah, I'll go get a drink. He said, what you want?
You hang with him normally?
Look, Jimmy, I'm a big deal, okay? so I'm like, I go, so I tell Jay, I said, yeah, you know what?
He pauses, answers the question, and he doesn't continue the story until he has the attention. Once you do have the attention to begin your story, you need to start with the context and details that are necessary to understand the conflict. Like this story is about a teacher wearing his mom's underwear to school.
When I was teaching, which is what this show is based on, I went home one weekend, and I was in my 30s. I was probably 33 years of age. I went home to see my mother, and then I went back, and while I was at home, my mother did my washing for me, because I was only 33. And then I went back, and on the Sunday night, I got really drunk, and then I went for a curry, and then the next day I went into school.
Just start with enough details for them to understand the basics, and then you can give more details as you go. But how do you end a story, and how do you do it without the conversation ending too? Give a closing statement that generalizes the story in some way, so it's easier for them to relate or have an opinion about it. Like, explain what you learned, how you felt about the experience, or you can literally ask them, have you ever experienced something like that? But now that you know how to tell stories, how do you practice? Here's 2 ways to master storytelling quickly. The first allows you to practice at home and it helps you get more stories when you feel like you have none. You simply look back on each day and journal, or even better, record yourself talking about it in the form of a story. Then, every once in a while, look back at them. See if you added enough detail, if it was confusing, or if you could have added more conflict, and then fix it. The second way to improve is to learn as much as possible from telling stories to people. If someone asks a question, just make sure to add more context the next time you tell it. Or if people tune out, notice what made them tune out and fix these things. And now that you know what to say for 65% of conversation, you can feel confident in keeping one going with anyone. But if you're still having trouble starting conversations with people, click the link in the description.